Hi everyone, my name is Jerry Wise, and I'd like to talk today about why narcissistic parents or parent hates the empath. For many decades, I've worked to help people get their toxic and narcissistic families out of them. And today I want to share a little bit about the struggles that we have as empaths. And there are a lot of empaths out there. The narcissistic parent hate and need the empath at the same time. Certainly, they don't like someone who has all those messy feelings. That's very irritating to them. And secondly, they kind of need you because they want to borrow self from you, and your emotional self they'd like to borrow. And so our being able to feel is somewhat attractive to them because narcissists tend to want to mirror other people who can interact emotionally. They don't know how to do that, so they watch and then they mimic that. It's not something that's genuine or internal, it's something they have learned through watching. You can even see at times narcissists, let's say at a funeral, they will say the right thing because not because they feel it or think it, but because they've seen people do that. And so they will mirror or mimic that when there's a situation that requires some emotionality. Narcissists are also jealous of empaths. And again, there are lots of reasons that may be, in that you are more naturally comfortable with your feelings, they are not. And they have a limited set of feelings, even though they might have a lot of fake feelings, but they're limited in kind of genuine feelings. And real feelings they probably are not so much in touch with, like their shame and things like that. We as empaths tend to be a little more manipulatable. We can be manipulated a little more easily if we are an empath. And certainly the narcissist will see us as weak. If you're a feeler, then you're weak. And that's the narcissist maxim, or rule, or guideline. Someone who's a feeling person is a weak person. Unless they're overfeeling and being overdramatic, then somehow that's normal. But anybody else who's overfeeling, then they are way too sensitive. Why are you just so sensitive? Why, it's like, well, because your behavior is pretty atrocious. That's feeling. We tend to be a little more over emotional as empaths. And our emotionality might at times get in the driver's seat versus the passenger seat of our car that we're driving. And we have to be careful about the emotionality getting in the driver's seat, because maturity requires us to separate feelings and thinking, because we want to be able to think and we want to be able to feel. But in growing up in a toxic, narcissistic, dysfunctional family, what's going to happen is we're going to tend to be directed by our feelings and our feel thinking, feelings that create the thinking that we have. The empath will want to break free from the narcissist's control. If we're an empath, we don't like that control and manipulation that a narcissistic parent will do. And we'll have this tug of war between the narcissist and us as empaths, because we really do want to set boundaries, though we may have difficulties doing that. The other reason why narcissistic parents hate empaths because they create a cycle of conflict for the narcissist. And when they create this cycle of conflict, again, we empathizers or empaths want to help. The narcissist seeks to control, we seek to help. And they want their needs met and validated, but of course they don't want to reciprocate in that. You are just to focus on my needs, wants, and validation, affirmation. Whether you get it from me is really, it's not an issue, and it's of no concern of mine, thinks the narcissist. And again, we have this cycle of conflict that goes on between the empath and the narcissist. So, in growing up in that kind of environment, what did we learn? What did we internalize? We are usable for our empathizing. We are usable. And we may even find that as a part of our self-worth. That if I'm usable for my empathizing, then that will give me some self-worth. Though that's a little more of a codependent type of dynamic. Our gifts of empathizing and emotional awareness is seen as weakness, immature, and even makes us gullible. And that's something we may have learned growing up in a narcissistic home. And we may believe those things, that we should be used and that we are weak, we're immature, and we are gullible. And thirdly, we are strongly expected to overfunction and overfeel. That's the role we are to play in emotional relationships. In relationship systems. That's the role we are to play. So we must be very careful and be self-aware of these patterns. Remember, increased or over-empathizing often indicates we may not be having enough empathy towards ourselves. Whenever we over something, oftentimes that is a draining of the self. Well, if you take someone who has fallen in love with someone and they're head over heels and the other person doesn't love them to the same degree, but we overlove them. But what's happening when we overlove? Well, often that can be addictive, it can have all kinds of other problems, but if we overlove, who gets left not having enough love? Us. When we overdo something, we are taking away from us. And so that's a good pattern and dynamic to remember. When we over something, usually we're taking that away from ourselves. We want to develop internal boundaries and increase detachment. And that's what internal boundaries are, a sense of detachment, a sense of wholeness. In other words, I don't need you to feel okay. I feel okay. I do care about people. I do love people. I do respect people. But you don't get to have my insides. You don't get to have those. Those are mine. And that I want internal boundaries and I need to increase my level of detachment if I tend to be an empath. We also want to develop a greater amount of self-care as an empath. And having worked with empaths for many decades now, usually doing self-care is not something they do well. And again, that's because our propensity, we lean towards feeling so much, and in feeling so much, again, that may reduce us in some ways. We might feel a lot, but that doesn't necessarily mean we're self-aware and self-caring a lot. And so those are two different dynamics. We also want to learn as empaths the difference between systems feelings, which are all those feelings that a family super self and a dysfunctional family program into us that we are supposed to feel when we act certain ways or do certain things or say no, or those are the feelings we're supposed to feel. That's systems feelings. That we want to learn the difference between system feelings and our own true feelings, which are not there because they are being forced by the relationship system. They are truly just my feelings. So when mom says, or let's say dad says, you've just always been a loser. Okay, now what am I supposed to feel? Shame. That would be a common thing. If somebody says you're a loser, I learn to feel shame. And if I feel shame, that's a systems feeling. He's saying something that's not even true. I'm not a loser. But he's purporting that I am a loser. Actually pretending, really. And he may even believe it. And that's fine, even if he does. But it's not reality. But my feelings say I should feel shame about this. That's a systems feeling. Now, if I hurt a best friend because of my own actions and I feel shame, that's a true feeling. That's a healthy sense of shame. But if I feel shame because you are distorting me, then it's a systems feeling. It's the way I'm supposed to feel when you say that. And I want to change those systems feelings. I hope that you'll like this video. Please comment, subscribe to the channel. If you want to work on doing these things even more, I've got an online program listed down there in the description. And thank you for joining me today. Have a great day and be wise.